My dear friends, good day and Happy New Year. I wish you a joyful year full of the interesting opportunities, amazing places to visit, and of course, meeting with interesting people. My new year start with a meeting with amazing and I would say a legendary person for me, Angela Knight. Angela, she's a member of the board at Astana Financial Service Authority. Angela, thank you a lot for your time today and for your support, permanent support of women leadership initiatives development. Um, I've just prepared a list of the question, and if you don't mind, I will start. Angela, you have such a diversified career. Looking through, I've just have been very impressed. Starting from the engineering industry, being in politics, being the Conservative Party member of Parliament representing the constituency of Erewash, being the chief executive officer at the British Banker Association, also leading the trade body of Energy UK, chairing the Office of Tax Simplification. And my question was all the time, how did you choose your career path? What kind of decision you've been taking before accepting the offers while moving to these companies?
Well, hi, John. Can I first of all thank you for inviting me to take part in this? And can I also wish you a very happy new year as well? I suppose that what I have done in my career is when I've seen some opportunities and indeed changing, as you rightly say, from one particular field to another. When I've seen the opportunities, I've put my name in the hat and gone for them. I've found it all very interesting. The ability to move, your career from one area to a completely different one is challenging, but it also is interesting, and it's amazing what you learn in the process. I originally set off to get a chemistry degree to get into industry. So that was probably, at least a logical decision. Politics, because sometimes you do want to really take part in affecting the area in which you and your friends and family and others live. Leading trade bodies were both roles that I was asked to do. And now, as I say, as a non-executive director in a number of different fields, I feel that I can bring it all together.
Thank you, Angela. And I think those days it was quite difficult to move from like male-dominated industry. And my question, was it difficult? I mean, what kind of challenges did you face? And can you please share with us some practical advice how to stay and succeed in male-dominated industries?
Well, it's not easy starting any new job. You get there and you don't know the people, you don't know the arrangements, you don't know how it works. And you have quite a sort of a fright internally, I think. And, handling that change is never the easiest. It's always good if you've got some sort of mentor, external mentor, who you can ring up and talk to them about it. And indeed, when you change from one area to a completely different area as well, then it can be doubly difficult. But it's amazing how quickly you can get over those first challenges of, everything from knowing where things are to, as I say, knowing the right people. But I've always found that if there's somebody external that I can ring up and say, I had a really terrible day today, and can I talk to you about it? That is a helpful thing to do. So I'd encourage others to do that. But, grip your nerves and take your courage in both hands. And that when you're new, everybody else feels the same about being new. And just carry on with the job, and it all works its way through very quickly indeed.
Thank you, Angela. I know that when we've been talking in Astana, you told me that you're just in many boards in different industry around the globe, in US, in UK, in Europe, and including Kazakhstan, of course. And my question, what are your observations of women leadership in corporate world? Are there any gaps that still need to be filled?
Well, yes, there are still gaps that need to be filled, but equally so, there's a lot of women coming through who are holding senior positions or are just sort of, in the middle areas. And so we're seeing increasing number of women getting into really, really strong key positions. And that I think is very encouraging. Everywhere that I have been involved with, I have met women who are determined to get themselves through the process. I've met women who have the same problems, that is, they've got the childcare and all those sorts of things that hang around at home, which can take your attention and mean that somehow your day is much fuller, or you've got, those other decisions you've got to make. So I meet women who've got those same problems. I find some are sort of more pushy than others, but at the same time, the very fact that right across the globe, you've got women who are moving up through all types of companies and all types of walks of life into the senior positions, all generally with the same issues, gives us a strong community to work on, but it's also changing the views of what you have to do, what you have to be, what your experiences should be in order to gain senior roles. And that, I think, is possibly the most important thing of all, that the general expectation now is not, well, that's sort of men are there and every so often you see a woman. The general expectation, I appreciate more in some countries than other, but the general expectation is that there'll be a mixture of people around that table, a mixture of people in that roles. And so we as women can play very strongly into that greater degree of opportunities and greater degree of expectation that is there now. I say, go for it. That's the one expression that I always use when women say to me, well, what do you think? I just say, go for it. Because if you go for it, you'll get it.
Angela, when women achieve some level of the executive position, like CEO, Chief Operation Officer, Chief Finance Officer, member of the board, do you think that they're still in need of the mentorship support? And what kind of mentorship support they can receive? And have you ever been personally mentors for some of the women where you've been working?
Yes, I think you need a different sort of support at different stages in your career. When you are still relatively young, relatively new, and you're taking sort of big steps and you haven't had too much experience, then the sort of mentor you need is someone who you can speak to and say, well, what do you think I should do? Or say, how should I think about these difficult situations? Because that mentor has been in those positions themselves, and they can sort of give you some suggestions, and you talking through with somebody with some knowledge. But also think important right the way through that there are some women's groups within organizations, and every company that I have been involved in, I've made sure that there is a women's group set up, especially where there are perhaps there's not very many women at all. Because if you've got a group of people like that, you then have the ability to do the day-to-day chat, even if it's over a coffee or even if it's just after work. And sometimes that day-to-day interaction can be helpful too. But whatever level you are within any organization, even if you are the person who's chairing it or your person who's chief executive or CFO, you'll have built a network by then. And that network may not be the same sort of mentoring people that you want, but at least you've got a network, a group where you can say when times are difficult, let's go out for a drink and have a chat. So building that network, having a direct mentorship, having women's groups is all part of what I see as a structure that helps women come forward and get themselves further up the hierarchy and further into stronger jobs and more responsible jobs than might otherwise have been the case.
Thank you, Angela. My next question, I always wanted to ask you this question secretly, 3 years ago when I was in London for my training at the IOD, Independent Directors Institute. And we had a course which called corporate governance. It was like a part of the course in the preparation for the exam, which called certification in company direction. And at this course, I just came across with the term which called diversity. and diversity with regard how board should operate. I mean, what kind of decision it should take. That there should be a diversity of opinion, diversity of experience, etc., etc. And the opposite word for diversity was group thinking. The situation where every member of the board agree and there is no discussion, everyone is positively on one side. And I just had this question in my mind. I should ask Angela, have you ever came across with the group thinking at the board level? And if yes, how did you handle, how did you overcome, how did you change it?
The answer to your question is yes, one does find groupthink. And it kind of develops slowly, so that's why one doesn't necessarily notice it particularly. And because it sort of creeps up on you, and then suddenly every non-executive director sitting around the board and the chairman have got to think, are we doing groupthink or are we not? And yes, I have been in a couple of situations where the groupthink has been obvious. It's usually when I have joined a new board, and so maybe they haven't had a new non-exec for a few years, and so you join the board and you can see how groupthink is taking place, and that's a really tricky one because you've got to do something about it, because you can see that it's just going all the way down one particular route, and people aren't thinking, well, what are the other options? What should we be considering? Do we really think that that's right? Should we not have probed more and looked at that data over there? Under those circumstances, what you do is you say words like, when is the next independent review of the board? Because as board members, we tend to fill in on an annual basis a questionnaire of how we think the board is operating and how we think the committees are operating. And we do that in the UK. I do it on my American board. I haven't really done it much in Europe, but in Europe other European countries are starting to do it. And there's one that I have a relationship that's starting to do it. So first of all, you do it yourselves. And then you say, we should bring in an independent assessor to see what they think. You get an agreement on that. You bring in the independent assessor. They sit in on a board, or they sit in at committee meetings, or they just talk to you as one-to-one. It depends just how the board wants to play it. And what will come back out are some of those critical areas which the board has to consider, of which groupthink inevitably is one. And groupthink and how you get through it is by adjusting the agenda so it operates in a different way. So instead of it being more of a reporting mechanism, the executives bring their various papers, but with a series of questions that they want the board to discuss rather than a recommendation which they want the board to agree. So I hope that helps, but groupthink one has to avoid. Otherwise, the chances of making bad decisions starts to really, really increase. And that is absolutely where you don't want to be as an organization, i.e. you don't want to be making bad decisions because you haven't thought out all the options first.
Thank you, Angela. I will take your recommendation for the board at where I am right now, just to use it actively, like day by day.
If it's of some help, Aijan, I managed to, in one of my boards where I could see it was taking place, I managed to get them to agree over a period of 2 years, first of all, to improve the assessment, and then secondly, to bring in the external assessor. And as a result of that, it was quite tricky for everybody, as a result of that, there is a different operation now of that board, and everybody's saying it's working better. So there's a direct example of how, go at it carefully and you can get to the right outcome.
Okay. My next question is that I know that you've been working in male-dominated industries, quite difficult to enter, and I guess those days you have to push yourself like go out of the comfort zone. But what about nowadays? Do you have this situation when you have to force yourself to come out of the comfort zone? What kind of situations?
Well, not really anymore, because you're absolutely right. There's certainly been some times I've been out of the comfort zone, but right now, Aijan, I feel that I've done so many different things, and they've been in so many quite tricky situations, of which probably the trickiest was in the banking crisis when I was representing the banking industry, and that was really, really difficult. But nothing really gets my heart beating with fear any longer, or anticipation. So, I also, one of the other sort of few advantages of age is that you can draw upon the experience that you've had in the past and think to yourself, well, I was in such and such a situation, which is similar to this one. That was what I did then, and this is what I'm going to do now. So that is quite helpful. But I'm still very much of the view that, surprises do come along. Things can be different. Sometimes it can be difficult. Meetings can be awkward. I just carry on. Just carry on doing what you do, doing it in the best way that you can. And even if it feels a bit tricky and hostile and difficult, and, it's one of those days that's not a good day, well, that's just part of life. Go home, have a drink, go to bed, go to sleep, chat with your family. Tomorrow's another day.
Angela, thank you a lot. And my last question, also wanted to ask you always, from your observations of our generation, of the younger generation, can you name 3 beliefs that limit ourselves or holding away ourselves in further development, in achieving success? How to overcome them?
Yeah, I think one of the things that can hold one back, particularly if you're female, is you tend to look at a role and you think, well, look at all the things that they've said that they want in that job spec. I can't do all of those things, so I won't apply. Well, the chances of anybody having all those things is small. But what a man will do is they'll say, well, I can do those bits, so I'm going to apply. So I would say the first thing is the fact that you might not be able to fit every single one of the things that are set out in a particular role doesn't mean that you can't go for it. Just go for it. That's number. Have some confidence. Go for it. That's number 1. Number 2 is that many women, or should I say most women, they have some form of family commitment. They've either got children, or they've got a partner or a husband, or some combination of that. And that they will always have to make, or feel they've got to make, some judgments. And, what should they do and how do they do it? And my answer to that is, it is always difficult and you do have to make judgments, but have a good relationship with your partner, be honest with your children, and don't let it hold you back. If you just tread water for 2 or 3 years, okay, but don't let it hold you back. Don't lose your ambition. Don't lose your drive. Don't lose your desire to move on. And the third thing is that sometimes people will look at a job level or a role level that's, they've been thinking about, and they will perhaps only see it as being men, or mostly men, or maybe there's only one woman in that, and they think, oh, that might be difficult. Yes, it might be difficult, but still go for it. So there's a bit of confidence. Sort out your balance with your home and your work. Don't lose sight of your goals, even if you tread water for a bit, and just go for it. There's a lot of opportunity out there. There's a lot of good women. And I think that better mixture at senior levels in companies and organizations will serve the countries well, they'll serve society well, and it will result in a better overall outcome for us all.
Thank you a lot, Angela. This was my last questions. I'm starting this year with interview with you, and I think many of my friends will find out a lot of insightful thoughts from this interview, which they can apply practically throughout the year. And I wish you a happy new year and hope to see you very, very soon in Kazakhstan this year. Thank you a lot, Angela.
I look forward to seeing you too, Aijan. Thank you very much and good luck for the year. And this is a very great initiative that you're doing. Well done to you.
Thank you, Angela.